Water damage operates on a strict timeline. A minor Class 1 loss, where moisture is confined to a single room, will rapidly escalate into a Class 4 loss involving deep structural saturation if left untreated. Taking a wait-and-see approach to drying always guarantees structural failure. Water weakens glue, delaminates flooring, and destroys drywall, meaning you end up paying for costly demolition and reconstruction instead of simple extraction. To prevent this, contractors generate a water damage estimate. This is a highly detailed, line-by-line assessment of all the time-sensitive tasks required to stop active spreading and contamination. The response window is extremely narrow. In the humid conditions following a flood, mold begins to colonize within 48 hours of any water event. We can manage this urgency using a 3-step protocol to transform a chaotic emergency response into a highly organized, carrier-ready estimate. Mastering this specific workflow allows you to document the site faster, protect against secondary damage, and ensure your rapid response translates into reliable cash flow. Step 1 begins before you ever arrive on site. You must consult regional watershed maps to identify the specific flood vulnerability of the property. This map of the Indian Cahokia Creek watershed shows how complex drainage networks dramatically increase flood exposure. Notice the southern portion. This Yazoo stream configuration prevents water from draining directly into the river, forcing it to pool and overflow during heavy precipitation. Environmental risks like this interact directly with the region's housing stock, requiring you to adjust your mitigation strategy based on whether you are entering a historic core or a modern development. 19th century architecture retains moisture differently, whereas modern engineered materials, like oriented strand board subflooring, possess high porosity and fail almost immediately upon saturation. This scanned environmental report details Zone A flood hazard areas, which are subject to a 100-year flood. Properties located here require strict regulatory compliance that dictates how you manage the damage and impacts the owner's insurance eligibility. Once on site, technicians use a standardized digital checklist to systematically record the water source, identify structural vulnerabilities, and catalog any pre-existing damage. Establishing this digital paper trail on day 1 validates your exact mitigation strategy and neutralizes any future disputes with adjusters over pre-existing conditions. Step 2 requires precise spatial documentation. Using a 360-degree camera paired with a floor plan app, technicians can sketch affected areas in minutes. As you sketch, you must digitally tag the exact moisture spread and note material dimensions directly in the app, separating half-inch drywall from 5/8, or MDF baseboards from finger joint pine. This diagram outlines the waterfall effect. Executing a primary emergency task inherently triggers a series of mandatory auxiliary tasks. Looking at the highlighted sections, failing to document each auxiliary step in your initial scope means performing on-site labor for free. To capture this labor, it is an absolute necessity to take before and after spatial documentation throughout the demolition phase. Insurance carriers require visual proof of the exact damage footprint and the specific material types before they will approve the removal of saturated materials. By comprehensively tracking the space digitally, you replace subjective field decisions with objective, mathematically verifiable evidence that adjusters can readily approve. The largest administrative friction point in this process is manual data entry. Keying in measurements by hand introduces calculation errors and stalls claim processing. Step 3 solves this by utilizing a one-click export feature, which pushes the completed site sketch and visual data directly into Xactimate. Once exported, Xactimate's sketch module automatically utilizes the imported dimensions to calculate total square footage, perimeter lengths, and ceiling heights. This automation instantly applies the correct quantities to your specific water mitigation and demolition line items. This graph plots daily psychrometric logs over a 4-day timeline, tracking temperature, relative humidity, and GPP. Notice the GPP line crossing the target threshold. Without these logs proving measurable drying progress, carriers will deny your daily equipment rental charges. It is important to remember that this mitigation scope, focused entirely on stabilization and demolition, is handled separately from the reconstruction scope, which covers material replacement. What you have at the end of this process is a fully generated, mathematically precise Xactimate PDF report, ready for a carrier signature. By accurately mapping regional risks, capturing standardized spatial data, and utilizing instant software integrations, you provide insurers with an estimate they can grant trust and approve without hesitation.